Okay, so um, uh, Norma Desmond calls Betty to the house because she wants to break them up. And her idea to break them up is interesting. She's going to break them up by inviting Betty over to the house so Betty will discover how Joe lives. Because Joe is, and I haven't put it like this before, but Joe is basically a male sex worker. He is, she pays him to prop up her illusions and tell her she's awesome and have sex with her. And he chooses to do that because he needs the cash. And it's easy, and it's wealth and all. He gets a pool and all this fancy stuff. So she brings Betty over to the house to sort of expose him with the idea that if she finds out, she's gonna find out he's like not a real man. He's not, he's a kept man, like a pet. That it'll humiliate him and that they'll break up. And this is Norma Desmond's idea. But there's a really interesting moment when Betty gets to the house because she arrives there. And he starts showing her around because he calls Norma's bluff and he's like, you know what? He loves Betty and he's gonna let Betty know this is his secret, this is his life. And so he starts telling her, look at this beautiful place. There's a bowling alley, there's a swimming pool, and he takes her on a tour of the house, talking about how great it is, and that he's addicted to the money basically. And she says something really interesting. Betty says, "Come away with me now. I never got that call. I've never been to this house." It's a neat moment because in that moment, Betty is just like Norma. She's choosing to not believe what she knows to be true. She knows that Joe Gillis, he doesn't come out and say it exactly, but she figures out from being there that Joe Gillis is basically a sex worker who is owned by Norma Desmond. And she says, you know what? I never got that phone call. I've never been here. Leave with me now. And she's offering him a chance to run away with her, and they'll never speak about this again. Just like Norma Desmond, who knows this movie isn't going to get made, but pretends that it is. Betty knows how Joe Gillis lives and is going to pretend she doesn't know. This is going to become real important as we head towards the end of the movie. Because this is the thing, it's not just Norma. More than one person does this. You probably know who else does this that I'll be saying at the end of this video or at the end of the series or whatever. And she leaves. She leaves because Norma's plan basically works. He can't give it up. He's addicted to the money. He's addicted to the lifestyle. If he becomes a screenwriter with her, how are they going to make any money, right? And he doesn't want to go back to the penniless existence and the typewriter and the car repossession and all of that stuff. So he exposes this to Betty, and he basically pushes Betty away because he's ashamed of himself. He's ashamed of how he lives and what he's doing, and he pushes her away for that reason. Then something happens that I find my students are a bit confused by, which is that he seems like he's chosen to be with Norma at that point. But he goes up to the bedroom and he starts packing to leave. A lot of my students were like, well, wait a minute, if he's going to ditch Norma, why doesn't he go away with Betty, who he loves? The issue is because they're surprised, because at first it seems like he's choosing Norma instead of Betty. He's ditching Betty for Norma. He's saying, Betty, I'm too addicted to Norma's money, go away. And it seems like that's his choice. Norma seems very thankful that he's made that choice, but then he packs and he leaves, and students are often confused about why he's not, if he's leaving Norma, why isn't he leaving Norma with Betty? Well, he breaks up with Betty because he's ashamed of how he's been living. But he breaks up with Norma so he can be his own man again. Right? He's too ashamed of the kind of person he's been to be with Betty. But he wants to get control in his life back because this has been a humiliating, awful experience. And so he's just going to go back to Ohio and be a journalist. He can't be with Betty because he's too ashamed of himself. But he can't be with Norma because he's ashamed of himself, and he needs to get his self-respect back, and so he leaves. There's a great moment, by the way, before Norma goes into the bedroom, and he goes in the bedroom, and she's following in there. She doesn't know he's packing at this point, and she stops by the mirror and she looks at herself, and she kind of adjusts, and then she heads into the bedroom. But it's a great moment because she checked herself in the mirror because this is going to be a big fight between the two of them, or she's going to go in and like have sex with him because I guess not a fight because she thinks she's won at this point. But she's going to go in and be with him. But she checks her makeup in the mirror for this big scene, which I think she imagines is going to be a big romantic scene where they're reunited, and she's horrified that when she opens the door, he's packing to leave her. Okay, cool. This is the crux of the film. he tells her the truth. Remember earlier in the movie, he said, you don't wake a sleepwalker? She's been living in a dream world, and he is going to give her a terrible, terrible dose of the truth. He tells her that the DeMille, that all the calls from the studio were because they wanted to rent her car. He says Max has been writing the fan letters. And then he tells her there's nothing wrong with being 50. The problem is if you're trying to be 25. This is the moment in the movie, the most important moment in the movie, is that he injects reality. Her whole thing is she's trying to reject the reality. Not just the reality of her career being over, but the reality of getting older and the reality of death coming for her. Everybody dies, and she doesn't want to think about that. She wants to believe she's young. She wants to believe she's a young movie star. And Max helps her with that fantasy. And Joe has been helping her with that fantasy, but no longer. And he rejects her. He rejects that. He puts truth into her fantasy world. At which point she loses her fucking mind. Because that is the one thing that she cannot handle. And he... right, because Max says Madame is the greatest star of all. But Joe just walks out. He leaves her. And she shoots him. And of course, you knew this was going to happen because he's dead in the pool. One of the great details is she shoots him in the back when he's walking away from her. And he keeps walking. He takes 2 or 3 more steps and she shoots him again. Right, he knows he's dead. But he wants to be his own man for these final seconds. And he just keeps walking away and eventually falls dead in the pool. And that's the end of the thing. At which point, and this is really where the movie it really hits, it's the most amazing thing in the world. I love it. And then we catch up. She's lost her mind. The stars are ageless. No one walks away from a star. The news companies arrive, and they describe her as an old woman. But really the crucial detail is that notice the company of the news. It's Paramount. The same company that owns the movies also owns the news vans. Because in America, news, which should be a public utility telling people things they need to know for who to vote for or what to do in an emergency like COVID or what to do in a weather emergency, news is not a public utility in America. News is an entertainment option. And so, of course, the movie studios are the same ones that own the news cameras and the news stations. And by the way, it's still true. Disney owns Fox and ABC, right? Like this is, right, they own it. And so it's really fascinating that the world of news is really just another slightly different kind of movie. I mean, Fox News is basically just like an alternate reality for people who get into this delusion about America. That, where they learn things. Fox News is constantly saying things that's not true because it's basically like a movie, which also says things that are not true. And that people live in a fantasy land. So they show up, and then Norma Desmond starts, to get her downstairs. She thinks she's in a movie, and Max is down there pretending to direct the movie cameras, which are actually news cameras, and she comes down. And that she's, oh, this is her big scene. I'm ready for my close-up. And she heads toward the camera. And the final shot of the film is her sort of walking towards, all you beautiful people out there in the dark. And here's where the movie, this is where it connects to all the other movies we looked all semester long. She says, all you beautiful people out there in the dark. She means the people watching the movie she thinks she's making. She thinks she's making Salome coming down the stairs. I love, by the way, that the news people stay perfectly still as she comes down the stairs. She's the only person who's real. She says, all you beautiful people out there in the dark. And she means the people watching the movie Salome that she thinks she's filming right now. But the beautiful people out there in the dark who are watching her, she says it directly to the camera, the news camera. But it's also Billy Wilder's camera. And she's talking not to the people who are... the imagined audience of her Salome movie, but to you, the people watching the movie Sunset Boulevard. You guys are the beautiful people out there in the dark that she's doing all of this for. And the movie ends with her coming towards you. And I will talk about what that means and why it's important in the last video.